Hi there, my name is Memo, this is my channel, Houseplanty Goodness, and essentially it's a place where I like to geek out about my big passion, which you might be able to see around me and behind me, it's tropical houseplants. Today, again, I want to focus a bit more on a specific plant, and this is a plant that I don't think I've had on the channel for a while now, and it has grown significantly, but I also know that this is a plant that some people struggle with. And the plant I want to talk about is the Scindapsus Moonlight, and I'll bring it up so you can see. So you might be able to see the plant in front of me now, and it has definitely got a lot bushier and bigger, and theoretically I should be letting this trail, or I should be giving this a plank to grow up. But at the moment, where it's growing, this is its life. This is what it's going to do. The vines are just keep wrapping around. It doesn't seem to affect it in any way or form. But I do know that a lot of people, and you might be able to see some of that silvery hue being picked up in the camera. Let me see if I can bring it in a bit closer so you might be able to see. There is some bleaching on the lower leaves, and some of the lower leaves are going to go yellow and drop off, and that's entirely fine. But I know that this is a plant that a lot of people struggled with. And interestingly enough, I was re-listening to a podcast episode from Plant Daddy Podcast, and I do encourage you to check it out. I've also got a video on my channel talking about some of my favorite planty podcasts, and that is one of them. Matthew and Stephen, amazing at what they do. Definitely check them out. But the thing that they were talking about is there was a lot of people that were looking for this, and there was an influx at some point in the market there, and I can confirm that it was similar to here. It wasn't a plant that was readily available, but it was a plant that became a bit more readily available for a short period of time. And it was interesting because what they were saying is what I'd experienced here as well. I'd bought this plant. This is the second plant. The first plant that I bought died a death, and it died a death from root rot. And that was the interesting thing that I want to talk a bit more about as well, because this is what their experience was as well. This isn't necessarily an easy plant. Most people would be aware of the Scindapsus argyraeus, I think it is, and it's the satin pothos, even though technically it's not a pothos, it's a Scindapsus. It's very closely related, but it's not an epipremnum essentially. And you can understand why people would call it that, because the leaf shape is kind of similar, the growth pattern is kind of similar, but there are certain similarities that kind of end there as well. The thing that this is similar to most pothos, and this is the crucial thing about getting the care of this right, is I almost have got this in an anthurium mix, so even more chunky and airy than my usual aroid soil mix, purely because these plants, at least in my experience, and I think this has been the experience of a lot of other people as well, will go towards root rot like that. So something to bear in mind. The other thing as well that you might have already seen is I've got this in a net pot. Believe it or not, the terracotta pot that I had this in before was still keeping it too damp. So for me, and take this with a pinch of salt, this works for me, it might not necessarily work for you, but a very light, airy mix, very go heavy on the perlite and the orchid bark, and in a net pot if you've got one, will do wonders for this plant, because essentially what you want with this plant is for it to go fully dry before you re-drench the whole thing and then let it be. And just to be entirely clear, even with this, even with the size of the plant, even on the fact that it's on the very top shelf and it's getting the most amount of light that it can possibly get, this is still in the winter getting watered once every 20 or even 30 days. That's how long it takes for it to absorb that moisture, even when there was less soil in it. Granted, in the summer that kind of drastically got, the timing between watering got drastically shorter. It was, I think, every 5 to 7 days, but it put out most of its growth, and I didn't want to hinder it because, as I've mentioned, it's a bit of a slow grower. This plant is almost 2 years old now. So that gives you an indication. If this was a pothos, 2 years on, you'd have a much larger plant than this, because that does grow a lot faster. There is a dark form of this, which I've been wanting to find for a very long period of time. It's very difficult to find the dark form in the UK. It's become a bit easier these days on eBay and things like that, but one leaf cutting does still go for quite expensive. It's still in the double digits, it's not in the triple digits, I don't think anymore. But based on how slow it grows and how slow it tends to establish, I don't know if I would do it. If anybody does have the dark form of this and the moonlight form of this, and they would like to comment down below in their experiences in terms of how quickly or slowly both of them will grow, please do share. I'd be really interested, because I don't know a lot of people that do have the dark form, and the dark form is almost black. It's not entirely black, it's just a very, very deep green. Very cool nonetheless. But yeah, this is a plant that some people might pick up as maybe not a beginner plant, but maybe an intermediate plant. Just know what you're getting in with this, and it sounds like I'm really kind of putting this plant down. It's a very beautiful plant, don't get me wrong, but the problem that happened with a lot of the batches that were already sold, they were in such dense soil, which probably worked for the grower because they've got ideal conditions and the watering schedules and all of these things that are not going to be achievable in most people's households, even people that geek out about plants as much as I do, and they're generally a bit extra. There is one of those things that generally most people say, don't repot as soon as you bring a plant home. I had a very good friend, Nick, on Instagram who'd got this, and he was really excited and was really worried, and I'm just like, look, I don't want to worry you. Move it into a much airier soil now. Don't wait for it to acclimate. It's going to be in shock regardless, and if you leave that in that soil for much longer, you will probably lose that plant to root rot because it just does not dry fast enough. To give you an example, on the previous plant I owned, and I was really trying to let it go until it was fully dry, there was a point, I think, where I hadn't watered it for 3 months and the soil was still sapping, and it was pretty much because all the roots were gone at that point. But just get it into a light soil mix. I haven't tried this in pond. I might take a cutting now that's as big as this and try it in pond and see if it likes life a bit more in there. I don't know. If you've tried it in pond, let me know down below. I'd be very curious. This is definitely a plant that is a bit slow. It's very beautiful. Out of all of the plants that I have in my collection, and it might just be because, and I keep saying this in most of my videos, I struggle a lot with mealybugs in here. This is usually covered in mealybugs, and I can treat it every couple of weeks and they will still keep coming back. It's probably because there's some mealybugs in the soil, but if you repot this as well, it throws a bit of a temper tantrum and it might lose half of its leaves. So at this particular moment in time, I'm just like, right, you can be as isolated as I can possibly get you in here. I'm sure that some of the mealybugs from the other plants are coming from this one, but generally just be aware of this plant. Stay on top, watch out for any form of bugs that you might get on this. Have it in a light, airy soil mix. Give it medium to bright indirect light. That's what I found works best for it. And do still fertilize it. I still fertilize it every second watering and it's completely fine. But yeah, this is probably not a plant that is necessarily great for beginners. Even some of the intermediate, if you get disappointed too quickly, maybe wait before you get this. This is a very beautiful plant, as I said, but wait until you become a bit more confident within yourself and you don't blame yourself if something goes wrong, because a lot of things can go wrong with this one. This might have been from a better batch than the one that I got because it didn't have as many problems, but I did exactly what I mentioned to Nick, my friend on Instagram, that basically I repotted it into that airy soil mix really quickly and it went much better with this one than it ever did with the other one. I'm trying to think if there's anything else I want to say about this. I don't think it has particularly high humidity requirements as well, so that's another thing to bear in mind. And yeah, I think that's everything I want to say. I really didn't want to like poo-poo on this plant too much, but I think it's good for people to know what they're getting into. And again, this is based on my experience. If you've got an entirely different experience in growing this plant, please do share down below, because I'm sure a lot of people that might be struggling might be watching this video trying to find out what they're doing wrong or what they can improve. And I think it would probably help them as well. But this has been my experience and this is what I have done in order to make this work. But yeah, hopefully you've enjoyed. Hopefully I shall see you here soon. And I truly, truly hope that you have a great rest of your day. Thanks. Bye.